My name is Heather Foley, and I'm 19 years old. My first job was at a retail company in the mall, and that's when I really realized how much appearances meant in the world. I started off working there as a sales associate, and we'd have people come in, hand us applications for interviews and stuff, and I'd ask my manager, what do I do with these? And there was always a box, and he told me to put it in the front and the back of the box. So one day I asked about it, and basically he told me the front of the box is for people who have a chance, and they'll actually look at their application. And the back is for who they're going to throw away because they didn't feel like they looked good enough to work here. I asked him, why is that? Why everyone has the same work value, right? Like, all because you don't look the part doesn't mean you're not a good worker. And he told me, if you don't look like the advertisement, then you won't be an asset to this company. So that's when I first really realized how much appearances meant in the world, and how if you didn't look how everyone wanted you to look, then you weren't going to fit in, and things were going to be harder. I think that's a lot to do with models and the people in advertisements, the quality workers, a tall, blonde girl with big boobs and curves. And that's what everyone wants, right? That's what everyone goes for. That's what all the models are, right? Well, it's wrong. Everyone's the same inside and out. The same, you can be smarter, more courageous, humorous. You don't have to be beautiful to do that. You don't have to have muscles and be toned or skinny as a twig. But, I mean, who's to say what? All of us are judging. 100% of the world is judging everyone. And to say you aren't, then you're lying to yourself. When you look at someone, you're like, wow, they're big, or racist. You can't help it. No one can help it. But we can try to fix it. We can try to look past that and try to know people before we judge, not books by... You don't judge a book by its cover, right? So why judge people by their cover? We should stop encouraging models. We should stop encouraging that you have to be a twig to fit in anywhere. We should get to know everybody as equality.
In the United States, at least 1,000 people die each year from anorexia. Over 5 million people, both men and women, suffer from anorexia alone.
As women, we should not feel like we have to be skinny or wear makeup or be tall to fit in the world. We should feel comfortable with who we are. We should not let anyone judge us or tell us how we have to look. We shouldn't let models depict on what we're going to wear that day or how often we go to the gym. We should feel how we want to feel whenever we want to feel it.
My name is Eric Ashley. All right, and I am 19 years young. Particularly, I would like to say that racism has socially stratified me. I honestly never knew racism when I was young. Basically, it was a figment to my imagination. However, as I began to grow older, things began to slowly change. I would say, for me, the very first encounter of racism was pretty much when I was living in Georgia. And it occurred when I was in the 4th grade. Up until that point, I was pretty much not picky about who I chose to hang around. Until finally, that shattered my viewpoints towards a lot of things. The incident which occurred was when I was in the 4th grade and my friend and I had finally planned a date when I could stay over. However, when that day came, something was quite awkward. I discovered his sister crying and I asked why, and he told me that she was going to get a beating because she had referred to me as a nigger. Our friendship began to fade. Pretty much I began to learn and understand the doings and why I was referred to as that. And a little hate began to develop within me. And by the 5th grade, I began to isolate myself and lean more towards my ethnic background. Since I grew up predominantly in the black community, it pretty much did not make things better until finally, when I was 15, I moved to Florida and attended Lake Brantley High School. And I had to pretty much deprogram my mind and accept that I was pretty much being mad at the wrong people. And upon establishing that, I began to accept Caucasian people as for who they truly are, and that they are pretty much the same as everybody else, and that they weren't much different. The more I began to interact with white people, tensions began to cease, and I could once again refer to them as being my friend. The resolution to this, I would honestly say, is that I think in order for racism to stop, the society must start over and establish that every man, regardless of color and background, is the same. The word superiority has to therefore be cut into pieces and then thrown into fire and burned and destroyed. And equality has to be taught rather than describing as a person as being different because of their color or background.
%33% of people that are born into the lower class end up being in the middle to middle upper class by the age of 29.
My name is Keela Rashad and I am 25 years old. As a child, I would say that my family's financial situation, we would have been considered the lower class. We always had food on the table and a roof over our head, but we never actually had much more than that. I was born to two young parents who had nothing more than a high school education. My father was a truck driver and my mother worked as a secretary for a pool company. About the time that I was 8, my parents got divorced and my mother became a single mother raising 2 kids. And my father never really paid child support to help her out. By the time I was 18, we had lived in approximately 20 different places. I would say we were very nomadic, and to this day, I do not own a lot of possessions because I moved so much when I was younger. We would go from living in gated communities in Longwood to a 2-bedroom apartment in Sanford where I shared a bedroom with my siblings. The first time I remember seeing the difference in class, I was in 5th grade. And there was a young boy in the class with me, and he had very ratty clothes on, and he smelled, and all the kids made fun of him. And I still remember back to that day that when I grew up, I knew I did not want to be poor because I didn't want that for myself. At the age of 17, my parents decided to move to Tennessee, and I lived with them for about a year up there before I realized that that place just wasn't for me because I knew I would never go anywhere financially successful. I moved back to Florida when I was 18 with $400, and for a good 9 to 10 months I couch jumped from between 3 different people. I would only stay a short amount of time so I didn't overdo my welcome, and they wouldn't actually realize that I was just kind of mooching off them and staying at their house. I would have to say that is probably one of the lowest points in my life and really made me realize what I wanted for the future. And if someone would have told me 7 years ago that I would be where I am today, I wouldn't have believed them. I believe that people can change their financial standings, but it takes hard work and determination. I went from being part of the lower class, making minimum wage, to someone I would say is part of the upper middle class today. And if it wasn't for my hard work and dedication to achieving my goals, I wouldn't have been able to move in such an upward mobility.
to talk to you today about two things, gender and social class, and how we need to fix these things, and racism and the problems that are there with that. I, like most of Floridians, I am on food stamps and living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm a college student. Can't get hired anywhere, and because you need to have a certain look about you to get a job, or you have to have certain requirements to get a job, preferably not being a dark-skinned person, I've noticed has been a problem with me and some members of my household trying to get a job. 16% of the people on food stamps and living off welfare checks or getting government aid are African American and or African American mixed. That needs to be fixed. I've thought of different ways of fixing it, and the only way I think that we can actually fix it is to make it more aware to the upper class people that they need to help us. And we need to also help ourselves. I mean, we all hear the stories about the parent who has like 10 kids and living off welfare checks and not doing much for the government and not helping back. We're trying to help the children of that family, but we're not trying to help them per se. We're trying to help the average American family who can't do much for themselves right now, who are trying to help themselves. We also need to fix another huge problem that we've had since forever now, and that's racism. Racism is a huge problem, and people have been trying to fix it forever. My personal story is that my parents are an interracial couple. My mom is what the black community would call red bone. She's really dark skinned. And my dad is a white Texan, as in tall, very white, stands out in the crowd. And they've had me and my younger sister. And my younger sister is, if you looked at her if we weren't sitting next to her, you wouldn't know we were sisters. She is very pale skinned, whereas I am a bit darker. And we were together one day at, I think, a mall or something, a crowded area, and I was pushing her in a stroller. My parents were a little bit behind us, and a shopper thought that I had stole her from my dad while he was talking to a stranger, aka my mom. Another one would be at my elementary school, which right up the street from my house. I used to walk to school with my mom and my dad sometimes. And they'd see my parents. They didn't know he was my dad, I guess, for some reason. And I had gotten sick and had to go home early. My dad came and get me, and they would not let him take me without calling my mom and my grandfather first to make sure it was okay that this white guy took me home. The same thing happened to my sister. My mom tried to pick her up. She came, my sister's sitting there calling her mommy, and they're not letting her go to her because she's a dark-skinned lady and my sister's white-looking. These things need to be fixed. Racism affects almost everybody, even if not directly, it affects somebody in some way. And everybody needs to do something about it. First off, stop stereotyping people. That's the first thing you have to do. If you see a Hispanic, they're Hispanic, doesn't mean anything else. If you see a black person, doesn't mean they've been in jail 4 times. If you see a white person, doesn't mean they're hillbillies. You have to stop racism people. If you see an Asian person, don't assume they can do math automatically. You have to stop stereotyping people. Everybody is everybody. We're all the same. As you cut our skin off, we are still blood, veins, same people. We have bones, we have brains, we're the same. When people start realizing that, things can get better. I know it's a small change, but it will have a huge effect.
Race, class, and gender influence our lives and everything we do, but it doesn't have to. We can fight social stratification by teaching acceptance to our future generations. We have way too much hate that was taught in this country, and now we must unteach it and start anew with this generation. America has an open system, and that means we have mobility that goes both up and down. Within this system, no one is stuck, unless you want to be. So in the case of social stratification, we can break it.